So this will be the first of our upper body strength, muscle strength, and muscle stability improving workouts. I'll be utilizing the wrist weights for this. They're not necessitous. You don't have to add the wrist weights in. It's an option for you. You can utilize the weight of your own limb if that's a preferable challenge level for you. The main goal is you want to use some amount of resistance that provides you with a challenge that you cannot perform more than 20 repetitions without having to stop and take a 30-second break. So what you'll see me doing today is 10 repetitions, 3 sets of 10 repetitions of exercises, one exercise that targets each of the major muscle groups of our upper body. I'll perform 10 repetitions seated. I'll perform 10 repetitions from a floor position. Could also be done on top of a bed or a coffee table. Doesn't have to be from the floor. And I'll perform 10 repetitions standing using a wall as an additional stabilizing or an additional assistive device. Part of the reason I'll be using a wall also is to emphasize that when we're trying to improve the strength of muscles and the stability of muscles, we want to do our best to minimize the amount of momentum that we're using. The goal for being able to strengthen and improve the stability of a muscle is our ability to isolate that muscle and make it work against gravity. So I'll begin seated, then I'll do a floor-based version, and then I'll do a standing version of each exercise, 3 sets. I'll be changing the camera angle as we go through the different positions, just in effort so that you'll be able to better see what it is that we're doing. I'm going to start with an exercise for my chest or for the muscles of our chest. I'll start with palms up, and I'm going to try to bring my arms locked as straight as possible up so that my palms meet right about chin level. The function of the muscles of our chest is to pull our arms forward and across the body. I'm trying to go just as slowly in both directions as I possibly can. Again, that's going to minimize the amount of momentum that we're using and maximize the amount of muscle isolation or muscle tension that we're building. I'm going to do 2 more. I'll take a 30-second break. Excellent. Now I'm going to transition to the floor. I'm going to show you a floor-based version of an exercise for the muscles of our chest. And then I'll transition to a standing version with my back against the wall. For the floor version, we're going to want to be face up on our backs. Knees can be up, legs can be straight, whatever your favorite position is. I'm going to start with my hands pushed together, right about eye level. Here, as opposed to coming from the bottom and upward, I'm going to try to let my hands fall backward, or my arms open and fall backward, almost as if I'm trying to take my elbows slightly farther backward than my ears, still keeping arms straight and focusing on the idea that the muscles of our chest are primarily there for the function of pulling our arms forward and across our body. Trying to move downward and back upward as slowly as I can an effort to really create tension in the muscles of the chest and isolate them in this movement. Okay, that's 10. I'll take 30 seconds. I'll transition to a wall-based version of that or a standing version. Here, I'm going to do my best to keep every part of my body completely still except for the area from my shoulder to my wrist. That's the only part of our body that we want to be moving. So, same form. I'll try to keep my head, my shoulders, my back, my rear end, and my heels against the wall. I'm going to come up, bring my arms or my hands together right about chin level. Straight arms as much as possible, trying to avoid arching my back, really trying to stabilize everything other than my arms, which are the moving limbs, in effort to isolate the muscles of my chest to do this work. About 3 more reps. One more. Excellent. Let's transition to shoulders now. I'll keep the same format, 3 sets, 10 repetitions each, 30 seconds between sets. I'll do 1 set seated, 1 set with a floor or a supine version, or I'll do a prone version, meaning face down, depending on the exercise, and I'll do 1 set standing, my back against the wall. All right, here we go. These are shoulder raises. They don't have to be done with both arms moving together. Can be done 1 arm at a time. I encourage everyone to make a fist, if you can, when you do these exercises. It helps to engage your shoulder girdle. And the purpose of the muscles of our shoulder, most of the muscles of our shoulders, are to elevate our arms outward away from our body, which is what this exercise is doing. Want to really try to focus on moving up and down as slowly as possible. Trying not to duck our chin or tuck our chin to our chest, trying to keep a nice tall posture, really isolate the muscles of the shoulder. Great. 30 seconds, I'm going to transition to a floor version or a floor-based version. Same muscle group, still shoulders. I'm going to show you a couple of different options here. One is going to be in this supine position. So on my back, face up. And then I'll show you a prone or a face down version. So here we go. Trying to raise my arms straight upward from my sides, palms down. Again, we have to think in terms of working against gravity. That's what's going to isolate a muscle group and force it to contract with enough intensity that it has the potential to increase the levels of our strength, is if we work against gravity. So that's a supine version. You keep doing that one if that's your preferred position. I'm going to show you an option, prone, meaning face down. I'll start with my arms ahead of my body. I'm going to try to raise either one arm at a time. Or you can do both at the same time. That's more difficult. I find that I have to do one arm at a time. Let me get 30 seconds of rest. I'll transition to a standing version. This will be our third set. 3 sets, 10 repetitions. That's the structure for today. In this standing position against the wall, we can keep arms straight. That's one possibility. Another possibility is to bend the elbows at 90 degrees. Again, trying to keep everything in contact with the wall. And move our elbows, keeping our fists level with our elbows, up to right about the same height as our ears. Trying to avoid arching away from the wall. Trying to keep shoulders down away from our ears. Again, making that fist. Now I'll show you the straight arm version. Same movement. Okay. Let's transition to back. The muscles of our back. The majority of the muscles of our back function in effort to pull our arms into our body, pull our elbows behind our body, and then also supinate our hand, meaning turn our palm upward. Those 3 motions together encompass most of the functions of the muscles of our back. So I'm going to turn sideways so that you have a slightly different view of this exercise. Again, I'm going to try to take as much movement out of every other part of my body as possible and really focus it on the muscles of my back. In order to do that in a seated position, I'm going to lean forward and rest my torso on my thighs. From here, I'm going to attempt to raise my arms, pull my elbows behind me, and turn my palms upward. Now, I am trying to make sure that I keep my head higher than my shoulders. I don't want to duck my head lower than my shoulders. And I really want to try to focus on the idea of using the muscles on the back side of my upper body to pull my arms into my body, my elbows behind my body, and turn my palm upward. We haven't talked about breathing yet. We'll do that in just a moment. One more repetition of these. Excellent. We're going to transition to the floor version now. In regard to breathing, you want to try to exhale when you lift, meaning whenever you apply force to perform whatever the exercise is, the portion of that movement where you are applying force or lifting, that's where we exhale. This is going to be prone, face down. Second set of working our back. We're going to follow along with that same idea of the function of the muscles of our back is to pull our arms into our body, our elbows behind our body, and turn our palms upward. Trying to go at the same speed in both directions. And remember, you want to exhale when you lift. So you'll hear me exhale here. "30 seconds. Transition to a standing version of this. Now here, I'll use the wall again, but I'm not going to have my torso against it. Instead, I'm going to force myself to keep my rear end in contact with the wall in effort to avoid stooping. I want to stay in this squatted position. Head up, shoulders down, pulling arms back, behind my body, elbows behind my body, and turning my palms up at the top of the movement. Using the wall again just helps to reduce the amount of momentum that I could generate by moving other parts of my body in effort to swing my arms. All right. Let's go to triceps, the back side of the arm, or the muscles in the back side of our arm. The function of the muscles of our triceps is to straighten our arm from the elbow. These are the muscles in the top half of the back side of our arm. They're there to straighten our arm from the elbow. We get these rib weights a little tighter. So to accomplish this in a seated position, I've got two options. I'll show you both. One is going to be leaning forward, similar to the position we were in for our back exercises, but now we start with our arms, our elbows tucked in against our bodies or our ribs. We kick our arms straight back, trying to get them as high as possible without moving the rest of our body. Only moving from the elbow, really trying to use the muscles in the back side of our arms to straighten that arm and lock it as straight as possible from the elbow. Another seated option for this muscle group can also be one arm at a time, extended overhead, trying to drop the arm, keeping the elbow as close to the ear as possible, and then extending from the elbow. Another possibility can be clasping hands together, dropping them back behind the head, and then pushing them above the head. So I'll take a 30-second break. I'll show you a floor version and then a standing version. The floor version is going to be very similar to what we just did seated, in the sense that we'll be in this supine position. I'm going to attempt to get my elbows directly in line with my ribs. I'll drop my forearms only, trying to keep my elbows as motionless as possible. And then I'll extend my arms, trying to lock my elbows, or to lock or use the muscles of your triceps, the muscles in the back of your arm, to lock your arms upward, straight, almost as if you're trying to punch into the ceiling. Again, you could also clasp your hands together, bring your thumbs down to meet your forehead, and push up from there. Just another option. 30-second rest. I'll show you a standing version. Similar position to the exercise we were doing for our back. I'm going to try to keep my rear end against the wall. I'll be leaning forward and extending my elbows behind myself. So about 30 seconds, I'll get into my squatted position. I'm going to lean forward, and from there, try to extend my arms, still trying to keep my inside of my arms in contact with my ribs the entire time, as well as keeping my elbows in contact with either my hips or the side of my torso, whatever makes more sense to you. Really trying to straighten the arm at the elbow when we get to that extended position. Excellent. Last exercise for the upper body will target the muscles of our biceps. The muscles on the front side, or the palm side of our arm. Function of the biceps is to elevate our hand towards our shoulder. I'll show you a seated version. I'll show you a version on the floor, face up. I'll show you a standing version. We'll do 3 sets, 10 repetitions each set. So here, I'm going to encourage everyone to really focus on keeping the inside of your arms in contact with your ribs, as well as keeping your elbows in contact with your hips. We're moving up and down at the same slow, deliberately slow pace, and really squeezing at the top. Another way to think about this is, if you think about trying to turn your pinky or your small finger as far upward as possible. Excellent. I'll show you a floor version now. This will be on our back, or supine. Here, really trying to focus on, again, turning the palm up as much as you possibly can, and trying to get knuckles into contact with the floor at this bottom point. From there, again, we'll maintain contact between the inside of our arms and our ribs, We'll also try to maintain contact between our elbows and our hips as we try to keep palms facing directly upward. Really squeezing at the top of the motion. Now, a slightly increased challenge level for this would be to elevate your arms off of that surface that they're resting on and perform these movements, same movements. Here, we're fighting gravity a little bit more. Thereby, it's going to stimulate the muscles of the biceps a little more intensely if we try to avoid allowing our arms to rest on that surface. Okay, standing version. Again, really trying to focus on squeezing the muscle at the top of the movement. We want to try to contract it as intensely as possible. So, from this position, I'm going to again try to turn my palm up as much as I can, squeeze from or make a fist from the pinky side of my finger, arm in contact with the body, elbow in contact with the hip. From there, I'm going to try to really raise or pull my fists or my palm into as close of a contact as possible with my chest. Moving upward and downward at a very slow pace. We're doing such a slow pace because we're really trying to emphasize being able to feel each of these muscles work in isolation. We'll do one more. Excellent. And that's your upper body workout using wrist weights or the weight of your limbs.